Um, we are on 2 seconds rolling.
We've been here before. Um, Part of me doesn't want to really commit to it until we know that there's something occurring.
I think don't we have a delay or something as well? I don't know, man. That was a different
It's
computer
usually
call.
about a 30-second delay, which is what this 30 seconds is.
We can we can cut out that yawn, dude. What's going on?
I'm gonna.
we're 28 seconds in. We're exhausted already in the first quarter.
It's I've got that Zion fitness. My off season's been a little bit rough. There's a lot of food. Um, See where we're going. I can't see anything.
Surely you were online, man. My data telling me 48 seconds and everything's green. Worst case, well, look, I'm gonna press this button too. Oh, look, I pressed the start recording button as well. So, we've got a backup plan. All
So
right.
now it's more official. Now, if something's going to happen, there we go. I can see it as well, so we're good. So it is 2024, and it's been about 2 weeks since we last recorded. And funnily enough, the previous video, I'm wearing another red shirt. It is a different red shirt, but my beard's grown a bit more, so the passing of time is evident. Did you have a good festive season,
I did have a
my
good
man?
festive season, man. I didn't even look at box scores for about 2 weeks. Crazy, right? I was the biggest thing I needed to try and do was make sure I had my player set up in fantasy, even though I'm still losing every single week. But that's another topic in itself, isn't it? So
We'll
hey,
we'll get our fantasy fix maybe later on because yeah, there's some interesting things that have occurred in the league. Um, we're in that All Star season now, right? Where even though All Star game is a little while off, we start talking about the All Star returns and players are starting to emerge as top five candidates for MVP and Rookie of the Year, and obviously things can still change, but we really are at that point of the season where we know probably who the good teams are, probably who the good players are. So I know that you wanted to talk about the ballot returns. I want to get off my chest real quick that Devin Booker deserves to at least be on the list above players like Austin Reeves. But I'm sure you've got a good take on that.
what do we got here? We got the list I got here is only showing me the top five. So in the West, we got Luka, Steph, SGA. Then we got James Harden and Kyrie. So you know what? I'll give you a bit of love there. Book probably should be in that top five, right? 4 or 5 at least minimum. We all know like Luka's gonna get the love, and Steph's gonna get the love, and SGA is deserving, I guess, right?
Yeah, look, I'm not in. I've looked at a top 10, and on the top 10, you've got players like Austin Reeves, and I even think D'Angelo Russell, right? That Lakers fandom really carrying them, but they should not be on there. But that does the reason why that's a problem is because they're at 138,000 votes, which means Booker has got even less votes than that. Um, and looking through his box scores, looking through his season, like yeah, he missed a little stint of time, but James Harden missed a good chunk. Kyrie's just come off missing a chunk as well. It's a very curious omission. I'm not too sure if there's some anti-Booker stance in the league happening.
Have you cast a vote yourself? Have you given Book one vote?
You try to sync it up on those triple days or those triple votes or double votes or whatever nonsense they do. Yeah, of course. I've put the entire Phoenix Suns lineup. I think Grayson Allen would be getting in the
So maybe actually here we're actually getting closer to what's actually occurring here because suddenly now all the Laker fans are doing exactly the same thing this Phoenix fan is doing. Is that what's going on here?
perhaps. It is difficult being on the more hipster side of a NBA franchise. So yeah, look, it was surprising. I think it's like maybe to shift it more positively though, and not dwell on the Phoenix aspect. It is lovely to see Tyrese Halliburton get his due in the East, kind of leading that whole category there, and really having quite a breakout season. And I guess there's a quick sidebar. Most improved player for Tyrese Halliburton, is it reasonable after the year where Jar won it? And he took that superstar lead. Are we witnessing the same thing, or are they going to steer away from doing those most improved on MVP caliber kind of guys?
Who's the current frontrunner for most improved?
It's a great question. I'll check some odds for you.
I think I was actually looking at an article about this a few days ago, but it's always a bit of a shifting sort of sands here, I think. But Like I said, man, the last few weeks I haven't really looked at the NBA that much to a certain extent. But while you're looking at that, man, you reckon Dame Lillard is deserving of an All-Star starting spot in the East? It feels like that's a name, that's a status situation. Why currently is number two in the East backcourt?
Well, when you look at the guard situation in the East, Halliburton, Maxi, Brunson, Trey, and Dame are the guards that come to mind. I'm hoping I haven't forgotten someone. Um, yeah, I do think. I mean, you obviously see it with these fan return votes. It is a popularity contest, and Trey isn't the most popular player. Jalen Brunson's probably a little bit niche for what people would want. So it isn't surprising to see him there. But then who are the other guards that give the East competition? I'm
Well,
kind of
I had Trey
willing to.
Young obviously listed on that, starting spot in my votes there, and that's probably arguable whether he is deserving of such a spot. Bronson obviously is another name that really sort of jumps to mind, I guess, as well. I guess we're sort of looking at statistically though, Dame's numbers are down across the board. That's the
Hmm.
reality, right? He's shooting woefully this season as well, based upon his standards. And yeah, the Bucks winning, but the Bucks win because they got Giannis. Yeah, that's the greater reality. They probably would be winning exactly the same rate here, even if they kept Drew Holiday right now. I don't think Lillard has had a huge impact on the Bucks' trajectory right now in the regular season at this point.
No, and then you've got obviously players like Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum if they're forwards, if they're guards. And then there's obviously a big push right now for Derek White to maybe get a bit of a nod. I don't think he'd get in the starting spot, but it'll be another interesting All Star year. I think we're going to have the same conversations we have every year. Someone's going to get snubbed, someone got in that they shouldn't. But it does feel like the West is far more competitive, right? The list of names that we were talking about before, De'Aaron Fox doesn't even really get a look you
Mm-mm.
know, in terms of that, and he's a deserving guard as well. So it's going to be a good time. I'm trying to segue this into, I guess, what I wanted to talk about. Another award conversation. Are you ready for this one?
Pull it up.
So currently, we've got a three-player MVP race. We've got Joel Embiid, off winning one. We've got Nikola Jokic, who's won two. And then we have Giannis, who still teeters around, even though he won his two a little while back. And it's quite reasonable to say that they'll be the top three this season. Maybe Shea gets a look in, maybe Luka gets a look in. But they're probably going to be there again next season, barring any major injuries. And what I'm getting for here is Luka's potentially got one to two MVPs in his career, but I don't think they're going to happen while these big three centers are dominating the top three. And ironically, we'll probably follow a little bit of a Kobe path where he might win one or two, and then we'll look back in his career and say, how did he not win more? But unlike the Steve Nash debate that people like to have, I think we're going to be pretty content with saying that Luka was very impressive, but there was other players being even more impressive.
What's your take? that Luka's not going to win that many MVP
Lucas,
awards
I think
due to
Lucas, I
this
think
field,
Lucas'
that's
career.
talented field.
Yeah, there you go. What a great summary you've just done
Is,
of
is
what I
that
just
it?
said. So
Because I
yeah,
think the biggest issue Luka faces right now is the Mavs continue not to be a title contender. I don't know right now if you think they're contenders this year. Sure, they're in the playoff race at the moment because they have Luka, all right, and then they've got a sidekick in Kyrie, and they've got some young talent and vet talent that's sort of surrounding them. But until the Dallas Mavericks do something to make their team a top four team, top three team in the West, Luka's not going to enter that conversation, and that's the biggest aspect of why, obviously, Jokic has won a few now after the Nuggets obviously have been so successful the last few seasons. Same with the 76ers, especially in the regular season, and same with obviously the Bucks as well. And that's where Tatum enters that conversation, SGA enters that conversation. You'd have to put these guys even ahead of Luka,
Hmm.
despite you could say that they're inferior players to a certain extent, because the Mavs are not good enough. They're not constructed to be good enough yet. And this is something we've touched upon, I think, last season as well.
Yeah, look, I think the reason why it just came to mind is that Luca. everyone keeps saying like Luka's young, but Luka's been in the league now for a handful of minutes,
True, true.
and he's putting up some phenomenal stat lines, and still has that potential to rival what LeBron's going to accumulate by the time he's finished his career. Assuming all well and good, but this MVP stance, he in a different decade probably is a clear favorite for an MVP, but the competition's so stiff currently that you do wonder, is he going to be able to break the mold here? And you've referenced the team success, but
Well, this has got to
um,
be to do with the team. This is 100% to do with the team. That's how I'm seeing this. All right, because if the Mavs were top two in the in the West right now, you'd be going, Luka should be top three, top four conversation for MVP, but they're not. They continue to tread water sort of down the list in the in the standings in the West.
but even with like someone like SGA who's pushed OKC above pretty much, the Sixers, Milwaukee, and Denver, he's still not getting that recognition because obviously the stat lines just aren't crazy enough, and it probably harkens back a little bit to maybe we should put some stock into some of these MVP games. I had my, comparative best and fairest take, but, Shea destroyed the Nuggets, a little while ago. And, there's probably some merit in winning those little MVP matchups. But I guess I feel like a professional segue right now because speaking of beating the Nuggets, congratulations, off the back to back of them bearing the buzzer beater against Golden State. I thought they were going to do it to you again, but you held on. You made your comeback.
Well, it was funny, all right. I think I said something in mid-December that I don't think the Magic um, are going to be above 500. I said I don't think the Magic are going to be above 500 come New Year's. And look, here we are. We're above 500, so I was wrong. All right, 20 and 15 at the moment. But suddenly we're right in the middle of the pack in the East, which again is play not shock horror, right? And I guess in part, woohoo, we beat the Nuggets, close game. And if we beat the defending champions, then we must be better than the champions, right? Isn't that the logic? Isn't that the playground logic of how these sort of matchups work? And yeah, look, I don't know. Look, I think you sort of told me last year, man, I should be a bit more optimistic about my team. I'm sort of like, yeah, well, it's nice. We're winning. Don't get me wrong, we're winning. We're winning more than we're losing still. All right, but uh, I think we're exactly where we play should be now. When we were like, I think second in the East. I think we peaked second in the East, just behind Boston. At some point, we were like, oh man, we're like, we're crazy good or something like that. But that's not really where we're at. I don't think at the moment. We're in the pack now between fourth to eighth of literally half a game in it. And look, if we get in the top six and we don't have to play play-in, I think that's a win for this season alone. If we play the play-in and qualify in the top eight, I think that's success in itself too. So look, I don't know. I think there's sort of high expectations, but yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know what you think so far riding into 2024 now with the Magic, but we're definitely. I don't know. I don't think. I think we're like the Mavs of the East, right?
No, you're not the Mavs of the East. I'm sorry, you don't
Without
have.
Luca.
Yeah, you don't have a caliber player like Luka. I think. How would I put it? The Magic are very interesting because you've got players like Fultz and Isaac who are still on your contract, um, who aren't playing for you, and they're just injuries, and they're going to get written off, and it's fine. You've got someone like Suggs coming back, actually performing well. Anthony Black's looking pretty solid for you, but none of your players are making a lot of money, right? So that's the interesting thing about your salary cap. It's one of the more interesting salary caps in the
Because we
league.
don't want to
I
pay them.
believe.
Didn't we cover this one last season? Because we don't want to pay them. That's the problem. They're not making any money because we don't want to pay them.
Well, Gary Harris, I think, is your highest paid player. So there's definitely some flexibility. And yeah, the goal is make the playoffs. That's it. You're not trying to do anything other than make the playoffs because you've had a little bit of a drought. And this is a new core that you're taking to the playoffs, and they get some experience. And obviously, Bankero is in his sophomore season, and Wagner's also still young and developing as well. There is a nice core here. I'm hoping that you can hold on to this optimism because it's been hard to get you to this point. So
I look. I don't. I guess. Could we? Do you think we should make a trade before the trade deadline?
No.
to go for it this season. Like, in part, I was thinking like, who would sort of land on our roster that would give me even greater optimism that we're gonna win, say, one, maybe even two rounds of the playoffs. And I guess one name that's been floating around a little bit that they're suggesting they should put on the trade block because they're not sure whether they'll keep him or not is Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. And so, and I guess I'm not saying we're going to have the assets or how we can line it up for something like that to happen, nor am I saying the Cavs are looking even to move him, okay? But it feels like we need a player of that sort of caliber to now for me to go, all right, yeah, all right, now I think we're a legit threat in the East, you know, to put like a high scoring all-star alongside these young and up-and-coming players, because that's what we're lacking, right? We're all young and coming, up-and-coming young players.
You just worry about the ball dominance, So like Benkera and Wagner actually balance quite well. They're both 20-point scorers, and the amount of shots and usage is around the same. I think you have a nice thing going, and bringing someone in like Mitchell really disrupts that. I I actually just think you hold the course. You just hold the course. There's no one that's on the market. The rumored players, you hear the rumors about Draymond, Clay, Levine. These are not the players that you bring in that change your situation. You just hold the course. You hold the course. You've got enough young assets there. You've got some expiring contracts. You've got some injury guys that, a team can just take and then give back another guy or a draft pick or something like that. It's it's a good spot to be in. You can't be in this spot for like two consecutive seasons, but right now you're in a good spot. You might get in All Star nod.
Right,
You're good.
remember in 2 seasons we've got to pay someone now, and then are we going to offer a contract that's significant enough to actually keep the free agents, isn't it? But talking about hold the course, man, you want to talk about OKC? Is this an organization that has held the course?
From a bigger take, I'm not ready to make it. It'd almost be its own recording, but there needs to be a bit of a deep dive on the Oklahoma City franchise, right? Because it's a small franchise that has had an exceptional amount of success, an exceptional amount of talent evaluation, and just a lot of patience. Like a lot of patience. Like when they're tanking, they're very committed to tanking, but it doesn't last too long. It's no process, for example. And they just continually have all-star caliber players appear on their roster. And the reason why I want to talk about them, we were praising the Timberwolves and are the Timberwolves legit, but here are the Thunder in the same conference as the Nuggets, giving the Nuggets a run for their money, staying toe on toe with Minnesota, and they're good. And they're good with a rookie who's come in and is being hyper efficient, one of the most efficient seasons ever, let alone from a rookie. You've got SGA who's clearly taken that leap to be a 30 plus point scorer and a consistent player. I watched a couple of the games, because I'm currently on break. He has a really deadly turnaround jumper, but he also plays at his own speed. He very much is a more, it's going to sound like a weird take, but he's a more finesse Luka in a sense. He's very, very smooth with how he plays. And this is all on a down season from Josh Giddey, right? So, I think that there was an assumption walking into the season that they had a big three of Giddey, SGA, and Chet. And Giddey has been a real non-factor, and perhaps it's the personal circumstances that are that everyone's just forgotten about because that's how modern media goes. But like in reference to Josh Giddey as well, he can't shoot. Like that was a known issue for him. He was not a shooter, and he needed the ball in his hands. And OKC has clearly shifted in a different direction because he is not able to be on the court in crunch time. Defensively, he's getting targeted, but they're still doing fine. Jalen Williams has obviously popped off as well. Like OKC are so flexible right now, right? They're so flexible.
Look, I think they're a highly dangerous team at the moment. You're right about Giddy. Giddy sort of really probably being one of the weakest links right now for their roster at the moment. But Jalen Williams has been a huge pickup for them last year, obviously in his second year now, being highly productive and efficient in his role. And I guess Giddy play now sort of reminds me of a name that's just been floated this week, and obviously again, which is Ricky Rubio. Yeah, remember Rubio came in and obviously now he's announced his retirement, so he's done as a pro NBA player. I don't know whether he's going to play in Euro League or something like that, finish off the last few years or something like that. But He came in, all this talent, but never really learned to shoot. Wasn't that, if you look back on Ricky Rubio's career, you go, this guy was super talented, great point guard, pass first, could average sort of 10 and 10, 10 and 8, something like that, 12 and 8, whatever, but he would never average 20 and 10 because he didn't have the offensive game, especially the shooting aspect of it, to be able to justify that. And I don't know, Giddy's potentially lining himself up for that unless he can learn to shoot. And obviously he needs to get past obviously his own off off court situations and maybe just really, I don't know, that's got to be a huge focus area. But I don't know, it's him, and now suddenly Ben Simmons can't shoot, right? So is this an Aussie thing? I don't know.
Well,
Oh, the
there was
Eagles can
definitely a
shoot, right?
real hit. There was definitely a real hit when, obviously the Josh Giddey saga comes out, but also he's had a real decline in play. And we want an Aussie hero. I think that's what we want, And right now our stock is in, I
Jock
guess, Dyson
Landau.
Daniels.
Jock Landau.
Landale hasn't even played for. Has Landale even played
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Houston?
yeah.
Like, I
He's
feel
played
like I
like
just haven't
he
seen.
plays like 5 minutes a game. He's like,
Oh yeah, yeah. He's making a lot of money, but I believe they're not planning to actually commit through that beyond the um, 8 million of this season or whatever it may be. I don't know,
Patty
something
Mills is a
crazy.
forgotten man now with the Hawks, right? That's a bit of a
Yeah, he's just buried in Atlanta. Joe Ingles, I think, is out at the moment for Orlando. So yeah, it's not a good time to be an Aussie, but yeah, just some love for OKC because it feels like they're going to be a little bit more frisky than they were last time around the playoffs. Obviously, something to watch would be the center position because Chet and Pokashevsky are not probably the players that you want manning down the middle. And if they go up against a team that is able to exploit that or is able to kind of like get into the paint a lot, it will be interesting to see how that plays out. But with their current record, they don't have to face the Timberwolves or Nuggets in the first round. So it's not unfeasible for them to cruise through to the second at minimum.
you did start this whole take on OKC about a deep dive into OKC, and I almost thought you were going to go down some conspiracy path or something. But then I guess I think if we sort of take a rewind back here, you were really just heaping some praise on their ability to develop talent and be patient, which is what you were pitching for me and the Orlando Magic. Is that sort of what as a summary,
Yeah,
you
look,
know?
I think I think the easiest way to put it is we often talk about, some teams that just never seem to get it right and have this consistent aura of bad luck and mismanagement. And I guess when you think of a law of average situation, or probable outcomes, one of the teams has to get it right. And it seems like OKC is that franchise, right? They get the
Mm,
big three with Harden and Westbrook and KD. And then, you look at the players that they built around that. They get Serge Ibaka through the draft as well. They get Kendrick Perkins as a free agent. I know not a super big name, but, you're talking about a championship caliber player who comes over to try to help. You get Derek Fisher for a stint there as well. And then that blows up. So then they get, Steven Adams through a trade / draft. Then they obviously get Sabonis at one point, Oladipo at one point, Paul George, Carmelo. Like,
CP3.
players come to OKC, and it is not a market that you would envision that being the case, right? When you look at the players who have played for OKC for a short stint of time, they could potentially rival the greatest players of a franchise like Charlotte, for example.
It feels like, well, I guess really now we're boiling down to that talent evaluation sort of perspective here, which I sort of said today. I guess, congrats to the Pistons. They finally got a win. Now they're on like a 3-game losing streak, and they get to start this losing streak all over again, or something like that. But there's a specific name there that's on that roster that I guess we've talked about before. And this might be the last time we ever talk about this guy, because he's probably out of the NBA in the next year or two, in all honesty. It's James Wiseman. Yeah, and this was a kid that was so highly sort of sought after, drafted number two in the draft there, and the Warriors took him, which was such a, I guess if you look at the 30 organizations there, you got to say the Warriors are, especially in the last decade or so, have been such a highly successful, organized sort of club that you would think get their stuff, get their act together, right? But clearly, I guess the question I'm sort of posing here is that why is it such a challenge to correctly evaluate high-end talent? And I guess on that aspect there, let's say Warriors got it wrong. Let's say the Pistons, had a swing at him and they're clearly not getting anything out of him. Yeah, that's why they're not even playing him. Yeah, he's not even a rotating. I can't see him being part of their picture. All right, and if they can't get him minutes, what other club's going to get him minutes? Not in the NBA. All right, but then there's clubs like say Miami that seem to be able to find these players that they can maximize what they get from them. So has this got to do with like the coaching? Has it got to do with the scouting? Look, we're obviously not insiders here in that sort of sense, but what is it? What do you think it is?
I think it's workplace culture, right? So there's some really interesting things that come out about the workplace culture of Miami, and there is a bit of an elitism of like not everyone can cut it here, and their drafting process, their signing process, they could have a plethora of names and they could have 10 people that are more talented conventionally than who they end up signing because they want to get people who fit their identity. Whereas Detroit is collecting assets. I just scrolled through the players list of there. Kevin Knox is a player who has bounced around, I think, on 3 or 4 teams now, who people felt high on at one point, but everyone else. Yep, but everyone else gave up on, and Detroit's like, no, we'll take a swing on it. James Wiseman, look, if we're giving Golden State a lot of credit, quite an indictment that you couldn't make it work there when they needed a center, and you were that center, and they took the swing on you. If you couldn't work there, no good. Marvin Bagley, right? Just again picked between Ayton and Luka, not panning out. Another team's given up on them. Like this team either has collected assets from other teams that they gave up on, or they have their own assets that they're struggling to give up on. Killian Hayes, for example, hasn't panned out the way that they want. Jaden Ivey has just kind of disappeared. Cade Cunningham, despite being somewhat encouraging, perhaps it's the current climate, but he's not looking as good as they would have hoped for. And that's, then they got Asar Thompson, who they were hiring.
Let's take your take here. You're saying that it's workplace culture that's really highly successful for the Miami Heat. So I'm going to say you're going to disagree with this, but let's just throw it out there. So if we put James Wiseman with the Miami Heat, would he be more successful?
Not necessarily, but I think you would know if he was going to make it in the league or not, because either they would make it work or he's not going to get it to work.
Or is the alternative here then you're sort of saying when you're drafting, it's more important to understand the culture that your club is trying to create to find the players that fit that culture. So therefore, what the Pistons need to really go back to is create that identity, which is probably something clear when they lost 28 games in a row. What was their identity?
Well, that's probably the biggest part of that is, last season I made a prediction for the Wemby sweepstakes that someone would lose, set the new losing record. The fact that it happened the season after when there's no one to be doing this for. And, and there's also, and like, this is another underrated part. People aren't aware, low key, they now play their conference rivals and division rivals back to back. So they have played the Wizards multiple times. They have played other Eastern teams more than the Western teams. The East is not as stacked as the West, and yet they're, it's just not a good culture. Something is wrong there. Monty Williams clearly hasn't had the effect that they had envisioned. But you know what? If you paid me $72 million to coach the worst NBA team of all time, I would take that every day of the week. So I'm not going to blame him too much for that one. But I don't know what they do. You've got players like Jalen Duren who you know what? Maybe Golden State will trade back Wiseman. Let's bring back Wiseman, bring back Paul. Let's see where we go.
Which I don't know. I guess you want to talk about in-season tournament as well. You're talking about rival games and stuff like that. I'm really curious, man. You buzzed me like, I don't know, about a week ago or so. You said, I got this hot take. I got to write it down. I don't want to forget it. All right. Now I've been waiting all this time to hear what this take is, man. Let's hear it.
So there's definitely, what you need to do is suspend a little bit of sensibility of, organization. All right. I just need you to do that for me because it will work. It just, there's a bit more effort involved. the in-season tournament with the financial gain, the publicity, the competitiveness, that was really, really good. But how can we get people to care about it just a little bit more? And then I was thinking, what if the winner of the in-season tournament had two things activate
Mm.
in time for the All-Star event? Number one, being the finals MVP, the tournament MVP, gets a guaranteed All-Star spot. And two, the winning team hosts that season's All Star game. Now, the reason why you have to suspend a little bit of belief is obviously that's a 2 month turnaround to do it, but theoretically, you could, kind of shelve 6 teams because we know as the tournament progressed, there's only a couple of teams that are eligible for that. But basically, that's a way that the city can get around it. And it also means that there's a bit of bragging rights. Because what if Indiana wins it twice in a row? And then it's like, oh, well, like I'm tired of going to Indiana for the All Star game or, those kind of things. What do you think about potentially having
I,
a secure All Star spot and the city hosting for winning?
I try and keep this open mind, man, but I guess you preface this by you'd get more. How do we get more eyes on the in-season tournament? Isn't that the goal, right? The more eyes on it, the more interest, the more hype, the more talk, the more money, more success that the league has in this whole format. What? How would this get more interest? That's like to me.
Because the
If
cities
if
would
if
be
if if
invested. Are you
if,
serious?
if the Lakers got the All Star game because they won the all in season tournament, how would that make me more interested in it?
Well, you're not supposed to be interested for the Lakers winning. You're wanting Orlando to win it. And with that guaranteed All Star spot, that's how you get a young team like Orlando, a guaranteed player. Like, let's say Paolo wins the in
How's
season
that a
tournament.
guarantee? That's not a guarantee that you get an All Star play in your All
No,
Star
but it
game
should.
because.
That's okay. I don't know why you're so anti that aspect. I think it's a nice way to get people to rally around their team, rally around their city. And the reality is, it is what, 6 games? It's 6 games to make the finals. It is not a large amount of effort expended by anybody. There's a bit of town pride behind it. It allows people to rally around their guy. Like, think about this. Like, let's say Charlotte, for example, LaMelo Ball, gets his All-Star nod and then gets injured. Yes. Why is he in the All-Star game when he's injured? Well, we know there's going to be an injury replacement, but it means he gets respect for what he did. And it's not an easy, like, and you're saying, oh, well, why do you get an automatic All-Star? It's a pretty hard All-Star to get. You've got to be flawless because that is what the in-season tournament resulted in. The 2 teams who met were 6-0, which means you need to go 7-0 to be the best player of the entire tournament to get that, right? So there's some merit into getting a reward for that individual player along with the trophy, whatever it may be. But the town spirit is the big thing. Imagine if you're cheering Orlando because Orlando could host the All-Star game and you know that in December, and then you could potentially book accommodation or book flights. There's an excitement around, well, my team won the in-season tournament, so I'm going to go to the All-Star game. And then they can do their parade there or their banner ceremony there and make it a bit more of a thing than
How
it was currently.
how excited would you have been if the Phoenix Suns had won the in-season tournament?
Very excited because any wins are good wins.
like, I'm not sure how much sarcasm there is right there, or not, because I guess if, let's say, the Orlando Magic had won the in-season tournament, I think I would have find that quite amusing, actually. But, I heard we're one of the teams that just missed out because of the format of how the point differential or something like that it was. I don't know, but it was look, man, look, I think your suggestions here, there's nothing wrong with them. They're okay. Okay, they're just on that long list of things that we could do to get more eyes on it, from a 4-point shot to a trampoline on the court to maybe you get to host the All-Star game. But hey, whatever sort of tickles someone's cup of tea in a sense, right? That's the reality here. And man, look, I don't know. I guess it'll be interesting to see what little tweaks they have next season and next year they do add to it, or end of this year. But hey, look, maybe that's the most interesting aspect of it. What will they tweak next season to make it a bit different?
I don't hate either of my ideas. The finals MVP getting the All Star node or this town getting it, but that's okay. We can just, it's similar to my video when I said there's going to be the longest losing streak. We just call back to it. That's what I'm hoping for here. So
It's like and I guess the last one we had here before we're gonna go jump into some fantasy stuff, I guess, is, man, did you know the Clippers have never retired someone's number?
I do now. It's not hard to
Did
believe
you know the
because prior to
Toronto
lots,
Raptors had not retired anyone's number?
that's a little more surprising, but okay.
Surely they could have retired Vince Carter. Surely they could
Well,
have
there's a lot of
retired
animosity there.
Chris Bosh. Yeah, Chris Bosh. Um, but you know, now the Orlando Magic jump off that list because we finally decided to retire Shaq's number for no known reason why, except we haven't retired anyone's number, so we decided it's time to do so. I don't know. I do not feel compelled to retire Shaq's number. Like, and I'm not. This is not a
Okay.
knock against Shaq. All right, and he's had his
No, no.
numbers retired by the Heat. He's had his number retired by the Lakers. Okay, but he did not win anything significant with the Magic. Okay, and if we're not going to retire anyone else's number that's come through our doors, why are we retiring Shaq's?
Well, the retiring numbers thing almost mimics our issues with the Hall of Fame, is that it gets a little bit easy to happen. Shaq's 4 year stint is pretty impressive to get a retired number. Obviously, he took them to their first finals. It's a new franchise. That's why he rookie of the year, scoring record, those kind of things. I do agree with you though. Like this is where we talked about Kawhi Leonard. Does Kawhi Leonard deserve to be retired by the Toronto Raptors? Well, you could make a case and say he has a better stance than Shaq does because at least he won a ring. But it is, I think we've moved away. I know that OKC, our beloved franchise, Nick Collison, I believe, is retired under there.
He played
So
his whole career there. What, 20 years,
correct,
19 years, or
and
something like that?
that's probably the thing. I think we want to look at players who spend their entire career at one place and also, have either multiple franchise records when they retire or have like a long lasting impact. Like I mean, it might be early to predict, but Haslam's not going to get retired by the Heat.
Yes, he is.
Really?
100%. Isn't he already
Okay.
slated to do so? Um, but here's the thing: if we're retiring Shaq as an Orlando number, we might as well retire Dwight. Yeah, you could say
Yes, we could
Dwight.
make a case and say Dwight did more.
Yeah,
No, look, I don't. I know what you're saying. It was an interesting one, right? And you could make a case. There's many players that jump 4 or 5 years and then go elsewhere.
Haslam, 19th of January. That's in 12 days' time. He's getting retired by the Heat
Oh, nice.
already. Straight up, straight up. That was a no hesitation move for the Heat, I think, which was a no-brainer. The guy's been there his whole career, and he's now jumping into the front office, I think, in some scouting role or development role or something like that. It's a no-brainer, and it's nothing to do with. I think that's clear, like with him and Nick Collison and some of these other sort of role players that were not superstar all-stars perhaps, but they had their whole career, longevity of a career at that organization. They impacted that organization was so great. I don't think Shaq ticks any of the boxes here, besides being Shaq and everything he did after the Magic, even more so, to have his number retired. That's the point. We might as well retire MJ then. MJ is great, right?
Yeah, I think the Shaq one is interesting. I mean, admittedly, maybe they should have done it when the Heat and Lakers did it as well, because obviously, like Shaq is, maybe it was a Shaq career thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just Orlando realizing that they have a good team and they can bring some publicity to it by reminding people that Shaq played for Orlando, and then people pay attention to Orlando. There's clearly an end game here. I don't know what it is though.
Anyway,
But
we
congrats.
get to hang something in the rafters and remind us of when Shaq went to the Lakers, huh? but um, but hey, look, man. I guess we're currently in the middle of a real. I was gonna say riveting, but it's not really that riveting. It's almost the same result we're getting right now in our fantasy league, despite a lot of roster changes in the last 3 weeks or so now since we've spoken. So, man, I don't know, man. What's going on your side, dude?
Well, I'm the beneficiary of a very successful trade in which I acquired Luka Doncic, and he's had some very, very prominent games for
Mm-hmm.
me. And have I missed my dear Jalen Brunson? Yeah, a little bit. Have I missed Chet Holmgren?
Are you
I think
contending
you're
Luca has some
starting to experience.
sore quads here?
I'm doing fine. He was resting because they pumped Portland and then he took it back to back. Look, I think you've taken my players, Jalen Brunson, Brook Lopez, and Chet Holmgren. Brook Lopez, I wasn't too attached to. I picked him up on waivers. That's a nice little bartering piece that I had. Chet Holmgren, I think you've noticed it now, or at least you're going to when you pay attention to his box scores. Some games are really good. Some games he just didn't give you a lot, and that was something that I was bothered with. And then Jalen Brunson, pretty consistently now getting 30 points on really good shooting splits. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I feel quite happy with the position that I picked up there. Obviously, there's, you know, some. I think the thing that we're currently seeing is I'm never going to win turnovers. Like, I'm never going to win turnovers. But I'm pretty dominant in the other categories. You're giving me a solid run here.
Well, we got
Where
one. We
free
got one more
throw.
day. We got one more day,
Yep.
obviously, and I think rebounds is currently in dispute still. Could go either way.
I'm up by four. Yep.
And I guess ultimately, if I did win rebounds, I think you're still gonna win this week, 5-4. But that's actually the best result we've had so far, me versus you. All right, and for me, that's called improvement, despite the fact I gave away Luka.
Hmm. I guess I can publicly confirm I don't love your trade that you've offered me. I believe I'm just gonna pull it up now. Um, so
I actually
for
cancelled it.
Iris,
I cancelled it. I changed my mind. I decided I don't
that's all
like it
good.
either.
That's all good. But I just feel like I need people to understand what your mindset is. That for me to give up Tyrese Halliburton, I would receive LaMelo Ball, who
Yep.
you traded Ant Edwards for,
Yep.
who's yet to suit up,
Yep.
Terry Rozier, and Kevin Durant, who has finally run the course of being phenomenal and is now injured.
Yep. He's got
Um,
sore legs too.
obviously Tyrese is a great asset. I've got three really good guards in Harden, Maxey, and Halliburton.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious why you think after I got Luka for what I did, why would you think that I've had a decline in my intelligence to accept that offer? That's what I'm.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I wasn't actually considering your decline in intelligence. I was thinking you might like to diversify your portfolio because, like I said, let's go back to the last what I just mentioned before. Okay, if I win rebounds this week, this would be an improvement, and this is an improvement me versus you for the three matches that we've had so far. Okay, despite the fact LaMelo Ball is not playing, KD is not playing either, and like I said, and like you've referenced, I traded away Doncic. So I think I am trending in an upward direction here. Now, this is what now you need to decide whether you still need to make further roster changes. Because I'll be honest, if I was you, because you've been obviously sitting first, I think from week one, pretty much I think in this league. All right, I probably wouldn't have gone down such a route that you went. But hey, look, man. You decide to try and improve on your first place team even further, and so far it's been doing all right. Don't get me wrong, but like I said, man, Luka is not necessarily always been an Iron Man. Hopefully he is. Hopefully the Mavs continue to stay in that spot where they continue to play him. I don't know, man. Things can happen. Things can happen. So at the end of the day, I've got I think about four trades I've put out in the last couple of days sitting out there, which have been accepted or well, declined or yet to be accepted or blah blah blah. So look, I'm still happy to shift some players, and as you notice, man, I put KD and Lamelo Ball on the block. Sure, they're injured right now, but the decision now is to made is that can they come back and have some impact, and when will they come back and have some impact for your fantasy team, and if that's the sort of move that a player or sorry, a manager might want to make. That's just what it is, and that's fantasy, hey.
Yeah, look, you're not wrong. I think I just think the Lamelo Ball asset I don't value as much as you do, so it's kind of a moot point on me. And then I guess also like, what are you banking on? That I'm worried Tyrese is going to have a decline because Tyrese Halliburton has just been phenomenal, really, this season. So for me to give up him,
Trade me someone else. Is there someone else you want me to trade me?
well, the last time we had this conversation, I was a strong beneficiary. So um,
If you don't want to trade Halliburton, it's fine. I can totally understand that, man. He's had a hot streak. He cooled down, I think, the last game, shot 5 from 17 or something like that, and did only got 7 assists. But hey, man, look, if there's someone else you want to put on a block, man, happy to consider it. I've been chasing, like I said, some other players on other teams too. I personally think I've loaded my trade offers in a fairly significant way. Yes, I guess it's unfortunate timing that KD right now is sort of iffy. I don't think he's not
Mm.
significantly injured, but obviously he's iffy day to day right now. But look, let's be clear, KD is a top 10 fantasy player still, and he's having a great season in his efficiencies across the board. So, look, look, if no one else wants to make moves, I'm okay with that. If someone wants to make some moves that then I'm happy to sort of continue to shake things up. It could be interesting.
Yeah, well, I think at least someone finally did a trade so that we could get that going through. Is there any grievances you need to air off that, or have you moved past
Dude,
whatever?
we've aired all our grievances off air to a point. Our commissioner quit the group, and then I don't know whether he's come back to the group because I quit the group, so I don't know. And
I think
it's been a real fiery season for a bunch of guys that don't know anything about the NBA or have any time to actually spend on it. It wasn't that how this was prefaced at the start of this.
yeah, I think that's obviously that's why I think things got met with such such defensiveness because obviously I think you went down a Nick conspiracy route thinking that we were trying to rig it against you when I promise you in real time we were both getting ready for Christmas and he did the same thing you did for the other day. So
I said to Kamish, man, all the love to Matt, all right. Just don't touch the buttons, all right. Once you set the rules, just let them play. Like that's my point of view. That's all I'm saying, okay. You actually don't have to do anything. You just let the play, all right. It will sort itself out. Then the fantasy league plays itself out. You don't need to go click buttons and then suddenly now things change. That's all there is
I
to it.
think I think really for those that couldn't translate what you just said is that you're the commissioner for the next league because clearly you need it to be however you need it to be because percentages and position
Can we
caps
play a
and
different format? Let's just play points.
why don't we just have a second? Why don't you just run a second league parallel with this league
Well,
and see if you
I'm
do
playing
anything?
in another league, as you probably already know, right? So I'm okay. That other league, I'm doing reasonably well. I'm like third, I think, or second or third, right? And I'm like, and I'm relying on LaMelo Ball there as well. So, it's this year is clearly the year of LaMelo Ball. He's gonna either take me to that championship or not. Let's see what happens, man. But yeah, look, hey, to come back to a sort of real roundabout to wrap up the last couple of minutes here. Um, you said right at the start, is Tyrese Halliburton deserving of most improved player? Right? You raised that point, and I brought up obviously the odds here for the current, players that are in that race. Tyrese Maxey, all right,
Mm.
Sengun, Halliburton, Scotty Barnes, yeah, maybe Kobe White. That's probably it. Maybe Derek White. Yeah, he's having a real solid season right now with the Celtics, even though he's sort of, such a deep team. Look, I don't think Halliburton's going to win, man. Yeah, I
Not with
think
that.
I don't think he's going to win. There is such a sort of a talented field right now. Look, Sengun is probably the one that jumps out to me as the most deserving. And if the Rockets stay above 500, yeah, if the Rockets stay above 500, you would have to feel that's a huge achievement. And he's a core part of that young team now with a couple of vets that they've brought in via trade that has sort of emulated that success. Yeah, Maxi with the Sixers is a second fiddle here to Embiid, and nothing wrong with that. Okay, but it's Embiid's team. Yeah, whereas the Rockets, all right, are such a sort of surprise story, I guess, this year.
I disagree. I'd say Maxi is the clear narrative favorite. You're talking about a top two or three team. You're talking about a guy who's really exploded and had some really big games, but also the narrative of James Harden leaves and they're better. And that's made from a leap such as him. Whereas the Rockets probably are not going to crack that top six position at the current pace and how competitive the West is. So you know what? It's interesting that the most improved player race is potentially more open and I guess interesting than the MVP race will probably inevitably end up being by the end of the season. So
Well, that's anyone's pick, man. I don't even know who I'd be trying to pick right now to win MVP. Especially now, Giannis is Mr. Not Giannis. Embiid is obviously Mr. 50 games
Embiid's
and
now
like
currently just
sore knee or
games.
something like that. Yeah, why not? Why not just give it to Tatum right now? The East, the Bucks are on top of the league right now. Sorry, the Celtics are on top of the league right now.
Celtics.
Let's give it to Tatum. I don't know, man. Still got a lot of basketball to play, right?
We'll